I always wanted to be in movies. I thought I'll make the next Pixar movie, and quite fascinated.
Any Pixar movies involved in?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'll work with medical clinics and I'll help them design educational videos for kids. So there'll be an injection that just pops out and go, hey, I'm a polio injection. I'm your great friend. And what kind of company you are, what kind of product you're really selling, and whether you're a design-led organization, product-led organization, or if you're a sales-led or marketing-led organization. They just don't have time to sit there and learn a new software. They just don't.
Welcome to the DevReady podcast, where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today should be quite a bit of fun. We've joined by Abby, who is really a head of product and design leadership roles in many different spaces, supporting people in StartMate in terms of mentorship in startups, and now driving initial early stage medical AI products, which has just raised some serious money in terms of Series A from what I've seen, and helping that drive that product forward, just involving how we drive a product-led product forward. So, Abby, thank you for joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about product design and everything in between, and how that might support in terms of how you're delivering value to the end consumer. But a couple of things we said offline, I'm sure we'll touch
absolutely. Upon. Design and how it adds value to a product is quite an interesting space, because you can look at it from 2 or 3 different angles, right? What kind of company you are, what kind of product you're really selling, and whether you're a design-led organization, product-led organization, or if you're a sales-led or marketing-led organization, right? And in today's world, for example, if you're selling Lollipop, vastly your product is designed overseas, you've already done that, you have vast amount of quantities you want to sell, you become a very much marketing-led and a sales-led organization, because you really need to move big numbers to make profit. But if you're looking at the space that I'm working in currently, which is very much medtech, when you're working with clinicians who are dealing with a lot of patients, then suddenly your product completely changes towards empathetical design, product-oriented category, right? Because now you're working with clinicians who are delivering care. So how do you become a technology that's an extension of their abilities rather than becoming a technology that is purely robotic or very cold? And that's where the tables really turn. So the value design can bring is specifically in these kind of organizations, where you have to talk to the customers, where you have to be very empathetic. You really need to understand the journey that they're going through every day. And considering clinicians are extremely busy all the time, how do you become a part of their lives and be invisible, but also something that's extremely integral to how they work every day? So that's where I think design can bring a lot of value.
And in that space, yeah, like you said, extremely busy. We can, in a digital world, we can sit in meetings all day, but they're in a face-to-face. That'd be exhausting if you think about it, one after the other, and always problem-solving, understanding what's going on with the patient. So what you're doing in that space, yes, you don't want to be a hindrance to. So when you bring technology, you don't want to be something that's going to cost time to actually get up and running and actually interact with. It's all about saving and improving the experience for what they see as the patient end more than anything, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. I think a lot of companies that I worked in the past, they always forget who your real customer is. For us, the real customer is a lot of times it's going to be the clinicians that we're working with, right? If you think about a pediatrician, for example, there is a wait list of 10 months to see them, right? Most of the pediatricians, or especially if you're good at what you do, your books are closed, right? So you can't book an appointment. They open the appointment book and it's gone within a day, and then they're closed for another 6 months, right? And to be a solution that is an extension of their capabilities or their abilities, it's not an easy task, right? They just don't have time to sit there and learn a new software. They just don't have time to go and customize things in your software. They're expecting something that just works right out of the box, right? So they start signing up and now they start using it, and suddenly it's a part of your workflow. And that is the biggest challenge you see, especially working in this area.
Easier said than done.
100%. 100%.
Easier said than done, because there's always some sort of curve of learning that exists. But the clinician's the end user, but the impact is also the patient end, I'd imagine. So how does that impact the patient or people visiting the clinician as well in terms of their experience? Because that's where the real value is.
Yes, spot on. I recently went to a medical clinic and we did a presentation in front of about 15 GPs, and we had a GP there who is about 60 years old, and she's been practicing medicine for about 35 years. And quote unquote, she basically said, since using our platform, which is Lyrebird, and she said, since using Lyrebird, I now go home on time. And in 35 years of practice, she had to work always extra hours. The way it works is you finish all your appointments and then you start doing your documentation, all your admin work, right? So at 5:30, you stop seeing the patients, and from then onwards, you're doing all the paperwork, and then you go home at 8 o'clock. And now she's basically, I've been going home on time at 5:30 or 6 o'clock to have food with the family. Otherwise, I've always gone home quite late. So big impact, makes our life a lot more, makes us feel very happy and proud that the industry that we're working in and the contributions are really making people's life better.
And the flow on effect, the family to the business to the patient, there's heaps going on there. If the
Yeah,
clinicians aren't overly tired and overworked, it's a better outcome for everyone. If they're more alert, like everyone, if we're working long hours, we get a little bit tired, we can drop a ball or two here and there. So it does help when we're getting a bit of support. Let's talk about you a little
definitely.
bit. Tell me about your background, your history. How did you get into the world of design originally?
This sounds very funny and cliche. I always wanted to be a designer for a very long time. I think I've met few people like myself who've been in design throughout the career. So I studied design in university, and then from there I worked as a 3D animator. That was my first love. I always wanted to be in movies. I thought I'll make the next Pixar movie, and quite fascinated.
Any Pixar movies involved in?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely not.
yeah.
So I started doing 3D animation, and you kind of realize that there's a separate person for doing rigging, there's a separate person for doing poly modeling, there's a separate person doing lighting, separate person doing materials. And I was like, geez, I thought I'm going to be doing all of these. So I'll be the animator. And then you're generally working in a very large project, and you're just one guy doing poly modeling. And I did that for about 2 years. And I was like, I don't want to be a poly modeler going forward, so I'm going to move on and do something else. And the easiest transition was to move from 3D animation to 2D animation, where I'll work with medical clinics and I'll help them design educational videos for kids. So there'll be a injection just pops out and go, "Hey, I'm a polio injection. I'm your great friend." And I think polio drops now, not injections. But they had some immunization injections, right? They'll jump out and say, "I'm your best friend," and they used to play those videos in clinics. So that was a time. And then it used to be on Flash and Macromedia, and they both died a bad death. And after they died, I kind of moved more.
Yeah, they did at the time, didn't they? Yes.
So I moved more towards user experience and graphic design, and that was the beginning of really moving into the industry I'm in. After a few years of working in graphic design, I kind of, did the same as everyone else in Melbourne, kind of, burned the midnight oil, working at St Kilda Road at agencies, doing website designs at nights, and working really hard, 14-hour days. I kind of moved towards working in consulting, and consulting kind of opened my eyes because in consulting firms, what happens, and I got very lucky. I wasn't um, in the implementation side, but rather the strategic side of the business. And somehow, because maybe I was better at articulating things, and they would say, "Okay, why don't you work on the strategic side?" And I started working in a lot of projects where you'll work very close to the stakeholders who make decisions in organizations, so mainly C-suite people. And you kind of realize the commercial side of a business, and then you start connecting the dots of how design can bring the commercial acumen to any organization. And that kind of changed my mindset about design in general. So rather than getting super close to the craft, I started to really break down of how design can contribute to the ROI of the business, and how design can build um, a competitive advantage for organizations that uses design as a, I don't want to use the term, lipstick and pig, but I really want to use the term of where it's seen as a superficial, last thing, but rather it could be a competitive advantage.
Can be, yeah. Yeah, can be. So, from a strategic perspective, let's unpack that a little bit and how it might help commercially. Everyone goes to the world of Apple and what they did with design in terms of phones and how their design impacted, even when they were building computers in the day and they built the first coloured PCs or at the time, or the coloured computers. That was a design decision that impacted sales. That's one quick example that everyone can probably hatch onto or latch onto. What's in your mind from a business perspective and thinking strategic around design? What does that actually mean? What do you look at? What are you unpacking when you're looking at product design, or even design from the way you position a particular product or a business?
What does the company want, right? So if you have users at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, there are two or three things. Either you have to increase the amount of engagement that people have
Yes.
with your product, right? So people really love using your product. And now this has got nothing to do with dollar value at this point of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think about Twitter, for example. I don't think they were profitable for a very, very long time, or even today. But the engagement was extremely high. People loved being part of that community. People loved contributing back to that community. So that gives you a lot of usage. Same with YouTube, right? Wasn't very profitable initially, but now they are very, very profitable, right? And then there's the other side, which is the dollar value, is whatever you're producing, how is that helping the company make or sell their product better or make more dollars based on that, right? So if you can pin your designs to those key pillars, then automatically design has a seat at the table, right? Most of the times when you're working with C-suite, they are judged based on the dollar value that they bring to the organization. The board is looking at the CEO, goes, how much, since the CEO started in this company, how much extra profit were we able to squeeze in? Or what is the extra engagement of our product in the market, right? So these are the two main factors I generally try to pin our products to. We go, okay, so since if we can make a change in design, whether it's by understanding the customer habits better, can we increase the engagement of our product? Can I say that X number of people were using the product before and now Y number of people are using the product? Or feature set, right? This feature was used by 5,000 doctors. Now it is being used by 11,000 doctors. So that's an increase of X number of percentage straight away, right? Because of the change that we brought in. So that is one of the factors I always look at is engagement, is how helpful it is. What are people saying about our product? If they're engaging more with your product, then obviously your product is fitting the lifestyle of a clinician, or it's fitting a lifestyle of someone else, right? And then the second part of that is now, since we have brought in more people to use this feature, can we commercialize it? Is there a possibility then we can make it more useful, but also charge money for it? Obviously, it takes a lot of money to build a feature. It takes
It does. It takes a lot of money, time,
it's not
investment.
easy at the end of the day,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
but then you look at that, has this feature or has this new thing that we've released, can we monetize from it, or is it helping us get more registrations? Is it helping us get more people on the platform as a paying user, right? So if you can connect these two things back to the business, then generally the value of design can be elevated within the business, right? But if you're not able to do that, the value of design then becomes, well, you're just making a page look good. You're not really helping us make more money, right?
There's a bit more to design than making it look good, though. There's the whole how someone experiences it as well. So there's two parts of it, right? So, yes, it looks clean and simple, but to get to clean and simple might mean many iterations, workflows, or changes in the way the user would engage with it. So, yeah, there's two parts to it in my mind. Yes, we can make it pretty, but pretty with 15 steps to get to an outcome is not a good outcome in my mind. Pretty with 1 to 2 steps to get to an outcome is going to be a better experience. So probably just talking a bit on that front, just to get people clear. It's not just to make things look good. It's how are they people going to experience them and get the outcome in a quicker, more effective way. And sometimes improving process is a part of design because it's an encompassing thing.
Yeah, 100%. So you can make things look pretty, but a lot of times it depends on the industry you're in again, right? So Instagram did this really well. They kind of realized that most of the users that are on our platform, they want to be able to take a photo very quickly and apply a filter and just post it, right? So they optimized the experience just for that. I mean, you can do a lot of things on Instagram, right? But the optimized experience is if I'm at an event and I quickly want to whip out my phone, click on a button, take a video, swipe, apply a couple of filters, and post. That experience needs to be extremely fast, and the adoption of that was so high, right? And that's the kind of experience you should always look at is what are the trade-offs you're going to make in terms of, um, let's say, the look of the product, but it's extremely usable and it fits the purpose that you're really using it for. And that those trade-offs is what's most important for you to understand. Sometimes you could completely get lost in the translation of I'm going to make a most beautiful product with no buttons visible, right? Because it just looks nice, and then
Looks great,
suddenly
yeah.
someone wants a button, right? Someone wants a call to action there, which looks ugly, but a lot of times that's what people are using. That's what they're expecting. It's better to have a call to action button where people can initiate an action and get to a task. If you cannot do that, that trade off is the most important thing for a designer. Is a lot of times we sit there going, we've designed this beautiful experience. Now, how do we get rid of things from this experience to make it most relevant to the user? And what are the buttons we can hide behind a three dot menu or hide behind a different design pattern? That becomes the most important thing.
You mentioned that right there, simplifying. So yes, you might design something, but then how do we simplify to make it more effective and easier for people to consume and get through? And you mentioned jobs there, and what job or call to action that they're trying to achieve, because the reality is, yeah, like you said, you might have a specific feature that has only got X amount of uptake, maybe because it's designed not well, or maybe because it's hidden in an area people can't find as well. So just why is the uptake reason? Because working with a lot of people and in supporting tech, people might say this area is not used at all, but because it's difficult to get to, it's convoluted. If you simplify the process, potentially it could be used. Why isn't it being used? I think going behind the data sometimes is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to people. There's nothing better than talking to people. I understand in some industries it is difficult to talk to people, but just talking to people and observing how they use your product can give you so much more data than just doing high-level surveys or internet research, etc. I kind of found that just sitting down and talking to one of your users and asking them silly questions and handing them a mobile phone and ask them to use your product, and you will learn so much in those 10 minutes that you would learn in probably 3 hours of research online.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you get some weird and wonderful experiences that your people, the way people consume a product. Sometimes you just think how, but yeah, everyone's different. Everyone uses a PC differently. Everyone's got different technical nous about them. So yeah, you got to get different levels of different experience, and depending on who your users are they highly technical? Are they not? We run a product in the pharmacy space, and the users are not very technical. They're retail assistant sort of spaces, not overly technical. And yeah, getting that simplistic enough for them to consume is a challenge in itself. And then how do you educate, just drive and support them in that? So I think knowing the type of user is important as well.
I remember distinctly, it's about 10 years ago, I used to work with a company called Census, and we used to manage Yellow Pages design. And we were testing our mobile app at that point of time for Yellow Pages. And we had some users come into the building, and we'll sit with them and I'll ask them the questions, right? When we spoke to them on call, they said, this is really good app, love the experience and everything. And then we sat down, we gave them the phone, and we said, okay, so now it's Sunday afternoon, water pipe has burst. How'd you go and find yourself a plumber? And they went onto the phone, they went to Google, they typed in something, and they clicked on the first option, which was Yellow Pages at that point of time. And they were using the entire experience on a browser, but they thought it was on a mobile phone, on a mobile app, sorry. And they kept saying, this is a great app experience, this is a great app experience. And you realize that they're not even in the app, right? They're using a browser experience.
Which can happen, yeah. It can happen quite easily. Mm.
That's why I say, probably don't listen to what people say, but observe what people do. It's very important. People might just say, yeah, it's very difficult to use, very difficult to use, and then you realize that the browser they're using is out of date and it's not scrolling properly. And we used to have these problems back in the day. We'll just build an experience just for IE6 because IE6 was terrible and people were still using it.
Yeah, horrible at the time. Yes. Yeah, yeah, correct.
So lucky that it's discontinued now, but back in the day, we would have to have a hotfix for IE6 for everything, right? And then a lot of user experience testing we'll do is people were on IE6 and they'll complain about a browser specific issue, but then you're trying to fix that problem in your app, which just doesn't exist. So it's fascinating. I mean, obviously a very old example, but the idea still exists, which is observe what they're doing when you're talking to them, give them something and observe rather than just listen to what user wants. It changes your perspective.
Yeah, that's really good advice for people when they're putting out a product to market, because would agree 100%. Yeah, observing. There's other ways to observe. If you're a bit of a mass market product, putting some tools behind your product that will record what people are doing in it is also an interesting exercise, and where you pick up some weird and wonderful things on how people might experience your product in terms of where they're clicking and what they're doing through the products. Another way, a form of observing, probably a bit more at scale and more than that one-on-one setting that you can actually drive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I know you're doing a bit of work with StartMate. Talk to me about that in terms of how you got involved, why you got involved. I know you've been around startups and more corporate exercises, but getting into the world of more startup-y these days. What did you get involved?
So I've been excited about startups for a very long time. I had a coffee business a few years ago, before my kids were born. So we had a coffee roastery and a cafe in South Melbourne, and from there we kind of decided that, and we ran it very much like a startup, from a very tech startup kind of thing, right? We wouldn't have two different kind of coffees, but we'll rather have, I'm going to test five different coffees. So I'll roast five different kind of coffees. I'll have it for cupping, get people to come and taste it. And then based on the coffee that they liked, I'll make them a coffee. Obviously it wasn't sustainable, didn't work for a very long time. But I kind of realized that maybe, this is not my calling. A physical business is not my calling. I want to get into startups. And in 2017, I went to Y Combinator in San Fran. I pitched a couple of business ideas there. And we were selected for the first round, but unfortunately we couldn't do the business there, and I had to come back to Australia because they wanted us to establish the business in US back in the
Yeah,
days.
they want you to be over there if you get.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it makes sense actually. You get a lot of people with money there, so they're ready to fund your business. It's very difficult when you move overseas and then you can't get funding. And a few years later, I kind of noticed that Australia is now, StartMate is doing great things in Australia. They're enabling a lot of young entrepreneurs to come and pitch ideas, and they also bring the community of investors and entrepreneurs together in a single room, so that investors can look at what cool stuff the entrepreneurs are working on, and entrepreneurs on the other hand can have access to the investors so they can invest in their businesses. So why wouldn't you want to be a part of that, right? And considering I really enjoy the intersection of the young minds coming in, or even basically creative minds coming together and then creating a solution that a lot of people haven't thought about, it really made me enthusiastic and happy. So I thought I'll first start working in StartMate area as an investor. So I joined a First Believers course, and being on the investment side is quite interesting, is because I was already investing in a lot of small startups using different forums, but not StartMate. But I thought StartMate is doing great, so I joined there, and from there I had the opportunity to go and mentor a lot of younger startups or people who are just coming out with basic ideas. Now, being in design thinking, I understand the entire journey of how do you validate a product, how do you choose your MVP, how do you go and build the first thing and start making money, and how do you get your first paying customer. I had a lot of knowledge about all that. I've read it in books, I've taught it, I've used it in my work, and I thought this is an opportunity to probably pass that knowledge on to someone who's actually doing it. And that's what really brought me to the mentoring side of StartMate. Really enjoyed, worked with a few startups just a couple of months ago, and just seeing them makes me feel younger, makes me feel more enthusiastic about the entire startup world. So yeah,
And
love it.
passing that information on is important, especially the world of design thinking and how you might not just build, because a lot of people get stuck in just development. It's easy to build a feature, but is it the right feature? What are we actually building? What's the problem we're solving? That's the difficult part.
Yeah, I've seen both sides, right? I've worked in companies where they've built so many features, but they've shelved it and they never released it because they realized after building is we probably didn't build the right thing, right? We built it too early, or we just saw a competitor have that feature and we tried to replicate it. And then you realize it wasn't the right thing. So leading from a product and design kind of a mindset is a very different methodology where you really go and validate a problem and then you go and build it. But again, I've seen both sides. I think where is a very good balance is when you are trying to build something with the right amount of research and you're ready to go and build something. Just not waiting for all the stars to align and 3 months of research and you launch a product and you realize you're too late to the market, or what you thought and your research was maybe completely wrong and people didn't buy it. So what is the right amount of research and design is I think where the delta is really sitting at. So for example, at Lyrebird, we spent about a week or two and nothing more than that before we can decide to build a feature and release it. And we're happy to just iterate on it. And that's one way of looking at it. And some of the other companies like EasyGo before this, Steak and Kick, where I was working with, a lot of times we would research for 3 to 4 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks. We talk to a lot of users even before we can make a decision, because it's a very profitable product, but at the same time, more than profitable, it's a big volume, right? Big volume product. So you can't just make overnight. Yeah, you can't make overnight changes.
It's different then, yeah. You don't want to be slower in decision then. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it depends on the where the business is at in terms of how you're going to evolve. But yes, agree, you're going to have to be doing some research and design upfront, not just building in terms of what's there. How do we validate? What's some points of validation? Explain how people might validate what their thinking is, just outside the web searching. Let's put it that way. How do I validate? You mentioned observe, get in front of people. There's ways we can do that. Maybe it's a Figma prototype. You can use things like lovable prototypes these days. There are no angles where you can vibe code and spin something up and just show people different things these days and just get some validation pretty quickly now, which is a massive benefit in the space.
It's no secret, as in the research methodologies that we've used 10 years ago still stands. The only difference is now you can do it a lot faster than what you were able to do back in the day. It depends on what you're trying to do. So I can generalize in this research into two parts, right? So one is, let's say, what we call is generative research. A generative research is where you're trying to generate ideas. You're just not sure what you want to build. And this is really keeping your eyes on peeled for your competitors, what they're doing. You go and talk to the market in general, saying, hey, if you had a magic wand and you just spin it, what is the next feature that you would want? Or you go to these conferences and try to meet people and understand what is the new thing you're trying to solve, right? And you're generating ideas, and that's generative research, which gives me so many different ideas of what I can do tomorrow, right? The other one is what we call this, let's say, evaluative research. So you've generated some ideas, you put together some wireframes, or you put together wireframes in whether it's Figma, whether it's on paper, whether it's in Lovable, right? And then what you're doing is you're evaluating your idea. So that's when you take it to a user and say, hey, you remember we had this conversation 3 months ago, and you said if you had a magic wand, you would like to build this. I've actually built it. What do you think about this? Is this what you were expecting, right? And you're evaluating your own idea, right? And they might just say, yeah, that sounds good, or maybe this is how we can do it, and then iterate on it, and then you start building a first version of that and release it to the market, and then you do something called a usability test, and usability is your litmus test, right? So you said this is what you wanted, and you said this looks pretty good now, and we built it and released it. Now you're seeing how many people actually use that feature, because you've spoken to 5 people or 10 people, right? And they said you're going in the right direction. So you had strong signals, but when you go and release it, that is the real truth, right? That's when you find out, are people actually using it like we expected?
Yeah, that's rubber hits the road. Yes. Yeah.
So I just break down research in these 3 simple steps. I know there are 15 different kinds of research. I don't want to get into all that, but simply if I had explained to someone, one is generative, one's evaluative.
Well, that's a good way to think about it, but
Yeah,
and generating ideas can stem from problems that you're seeing in the product, within the conversation with clients or users. There are different ways to think about that, or you're just trying to generate the next feature, which is tough sometimes. And it's just real ideation. How are we going to add value outside the box? Because sometimes our users don't know what they don't know, and don't understand what technology can bring sometimes. So that's when it gets a little bit grey as to, are we creating something that no one wants, or are we really innovating? So that's where it becomes, probably you need some serious evaluation at that point.
yeah. Innovation is a very interesting space as well. I know innovation word is thrown around everywhere. So when I was at EasyGo, we built the innovation capability, and the whole idea of innovation is how do you take something that already exists in the market and do it 5 times better, minimum 5x. It can't be anything less than that. If you hit 10x, 15x, great. But how can you pick something from the market and make it 5 to 10x better? And that's where really innovation comes into the picture. And people love to complain, right? So you go and talk to anybody, any of your users, and say, "Hey, we built this product," and they go, "I love your product, but before I use your product, all these things I have to do, it's so pain in the neck, right? How do I fix this?" And then you go, "Well, that's maybe we can start playing in that area too, and that's your next feature set, right?" And you make it 10x better, and they're already a part of your product. They'll more than happy to pay you $10, $20 more to absorb the new feature that you're building, right? So it's really about how can you solve the nagging problems users have, and then become a part of their normal ecosystem, and suddenly you become a very valuable product for them.
If you're speaking to someone, then let's talk about startup, early stage. What do you recommend they do? Step one, they've got an idea off the back of a napkin. They've got maybe built a pitch deck. Where do they start first? What do you recommend they do off the back of that? What should they actually execute on? Because ideas are one thing. What's the first point of execution in your mind when you're going down that early stage building a product?
Yeah, so I'll give it three rather than one. Here you go. Number one is
We'll take a few bonuses.
figure out your positioning. I've spoken to so many people who just want to do 10 things at a time. I would just say hone down to one thing, right? So what's your positioning? For example, I'm a business that helps entrepreneurs find a voice. So I'm going to take them to do this one thing, right? And double down on just one thing. And that becomes your most important value proposition, right? Don't go and think using my platform I can do 8 different things. Just say what is that one thing that I can do tomorrow to solve that problem. And that's the first thing, is nail your positioning. Number two is progression over perfection. And just keep building something, and just keep building it, right? Making it better. Let's not try to get it perfect. Let's try to get it to somewhere first. So progression over perfection.
When someone says perfect, I remember, I don't know who said this once, but I read it somewhere. Perfection means it never needs to change again. It's perfect; it will never change again for the dawn of time. That's what perfection means. It will stay stagnant. Nothing in this world stays stagnant. Always needs to change. Say my mind, that means nothing is perfect and nothing ever will be. So I think if you're striving for it, you're striving for something that's a unicorn, effectively, which doesn't exist. So yeah, there was something that I read once that just gets me thinking. Yeah, don't be too. There's no such thing. So yeah,
Yeah, I'd just say progression, Jason. Like, keep building something out there, whether you use Lovable, whether you use something else. Just don't wait for all the stars to align. Just build
no,
something.
it's very true.
Yeah, and the last one is get your first paying customer. I always say that. Look, your business ain't going to survive.
You need the paying customers. Yes,
Yeah, your business ain't
yes,
going to survive if you don't have any paying customers.
yeah,
A
correct.
lot of people just go and they spend 50, 60 grand in hiring a developer overseas and getting all these 15 features nailed before they can launch their product, and they launch their product and no one wants it. And don't talk to people, get them to pay. I've spoken to so many people. So what do you think about this? They go, "This is amazing, man. This is so good. Do you want to buy it?" Probably not now. Let's just get them to pay. Get them to pay.
Yeah.
Look, I was in coffee business, and I'd go to Costa Rica and meet this amazing farmer who had this beautiful coffee grown, which is called a micro lot, in this corner, which gets the perfect amount of shade and sunlight and water and beautiful soil. And that little bit of coffee, he will have 2 kilos of coffee to sell, and each kilo would be about $300 each. And I was like, 2 kilos of coffee, $600, but it's the best of the best of the best, right? And who doesn't want coffee in Melbourne? Melbourne is the place. Mate, I could not sell that coffee because no one was willing to pay me $40 for a cup.
No, that is very
But
true.
everyone who tasted that, they said, this is the best coffee. I
Yeah,
would love to buy this. And I was like, you can, $30. And they said, no, we don't want to.
yeah. Oh,
Yep.
there's a point where price and demand don't really work, so that's pretty much it. Yes.
That's it. This is why
Yeah,
perfection is
yeah,
probably not always that will help, but what will help is progression, right? So yeah, we got the perfect coffee, but a lot of times people just say they love it, but they wouldn't be ready to pay for it. So that's why get your paying customer, right? And paying customers are buying $6 coffee. You double down on $6, $5 coffee, or $6 now. You double down on that rather than trying to get the most best tasting coffee in this world. So that's something to think about.
No, thank you for that, and thanks for joining us on the DevReady podcast today. It's been insightful from what product design might mean to a product in the end, and just getting started. And I think that's the point: getting started by getting feedback and real feedback and observing. You mentioned a number of times during the podcast how do we observe what our users are actually doing with the product. It will tell you a lot in terms of how you might improve what you're doing, and just incremental improvement in the product is also important, especially in feature sets. Abby, thank you for coming on and joining us on the DevReady podcast. Really a pleasure.
No worries at all. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you.